Hello.
Hi.
Welcome back to our podcast.
Here for the company, where we bring you the cases, the chaos, and we're the company. So grab a drink, sit back, enjoy.
And hopefully this one is going to be a fun one because apparently craziness has gone down.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. And it's just insane. Like, having watched the first trial and then now watching the second one, listen, we both have trauma in our life, right?
Yeah.
And we've talked about there is crap we just don't remember. Whole periods of our lives we just don't remember because trauma makes your mind do weird things.
Yeah, I agree.
And I would have to say this town is so like intracellular that even the EMTs and stuff, it's traumatic. And we might have to bring my friend Christy on here because she is a EMT and she doesn't give me the tea, but like they tell stories and stuff about things they experience on shifts and things that are really hard, days that are really hard, nights that are really hard, and different things like that. And they'll like be there for each other. And you'll see some of these EMTs are just answer the freaking questions. Why are you yelling at the lawyers? And I don't care what you say, your memory is not better today than it was the day after the incident.
And we're talking about the EMTs in this case, right? The Karen Reed case?
Yes. So I will say, I forgot about this, but it comes up and it gets a little choppy. They never really outline this. So we're going to be reacting to a lot of the footage of the trial for Karen Reed. And I have the best of my ability compiled timestamps with stuff I really want to hear and really want Gloria to hear because she doesn't watch trial all day like I do. I just listen, to be fair.
Trial to me is so boring. And there's so much like waiting in between the things that they're saying that I don't have the patience for it, I think.
And a lot of time what you can't see, but you can hear it in some of these, is the lawyers are taking notes while they're asking questions. So it's a process. And they're literally having to do their job. But there are some parts I will play for you that even the lawyer's caught off guard and he like goes, "Wait, what? Does that matter?"
Okay.
Yeah, it's intense. So what we're going to do first, I thought about playing both opening statements for you, but we know the prosecution's case. They think Karen Reed hit John O'Keefe with her car. I think we should listen to the defense opening statement, and I want to see your reaction to that.
Okay.
So
let's do it.
Okay, let me pull that up.
All right, back to
Karen
Reed trial 2.
So let me pull my timestamps over here and get into this video. All right, here we go. I'm going to move this man along, though. That's Brennan. That's the prosecutor.
He is for the other side, right? He's not.
He's the prosecution. So he's the one trying the case against Karen Reed. It's hard because he's probably a really good person, but I don't understand this case. Okay, let's go.
The evidence in this case will establish above everything else 3 points.
I'm going to stop him. This is Alan Jackson, and he was a DA in LA County.
Okay, this is the guy that worked out here?
Mm-hmm.
Or he does?
He may still. So yeah, we have hometown ties to this guy. All right.
There was no collision with John O'Keefe. There was no collision. There was no collision. John O'Keefe did not die from being hit by a vehicle. Period. The facts will show that. The evidence will show that. The data will show that. The science will show that. And the experts will tell you that. You'll learn that the Commonwealth has pinned its entire case on a brazen and a flawed assertion that is untethered, unconnected to the facts and to the evidence. And their assertion is contrary to science. Because at the end of the day, folks, there was no collision with John O'Keefe. So how did we end up here? How does Karen Reed end up sitting in that chair on trial for an event that literally never happened? Well, the evidence is going to explain it. And it can be summed up in the following text message at the very beginning of this investigation. A text message of a now fired Massachusetts State Police officer.
What text do you think he's going to read?
I don't know.
Nope. Because he's a Boston cop too.
Named Michael Proctor. He was the lead investigator on this case, and he was talking about a fellow officer, a fellow cop, who owned the property where John O'Keefe's body was found. Text message with a buddy. Question, is the homeowner going to catch any shit? Answer, nope. He's a Boston cop too.
So I will say, in the first trial, when this text message was read for the first time, John O'Keefe's mother was sitting right behind the man who read it, and I don't remember if it was him or somebody else. John O'Keefe's mom mouthed, nope,
While he was reading it?
while he was reading it. Like, she knows that part of this case. I mean, she's sat through it twice, right? By the way, we're not going to react to her because they actually never asked her questions. And also, I think she's a victim of the whole thing, so we're not going to react to her. But it was wild they even put her on the stand.
That quote defines the lack of integrity of the Commonwealth's entire case, its entire investigation, and this prosecution. During the course of this trial, you'll learn much more about Mr. Proctor, why he said that, and what it really means. What you'll see and hear in this courtroom in the coming weeks is not just a story of a tragic loss. And make no mistake, John O'Keefe's death is and was a tragic loss. But the story you'll hear is about an investigation that was riddled with errors from the beginning, a rush to judgment, conflicted, and corrupted from the start. Corrupted by bias, corrupted by incompetence, and corrupted by deceit. Finally, it was corrupted by a deliberate effort to avoid and to cover up the very truth that you are seeking. You'll find when you hear the evidence that the Commonwealth's case is the literal definition of reasonable doubt. They won't be able to talk their way out of it. They won't be able to explain their way out of it. They won't be able to excuse their way out of it. And they can't meet their extreme burden of proof, which the court will tell you is beyond any and all reasonable doubt and to a moral certainty. Members of the jury, Karen Reed found John O'Keefe really dead on the front lawn of a Boston police officer, Brian Albert, at 6 a.m. on January 29th, 2022. Picture the scene. Blood-curdling screams, ambulances, emergency lights on, fire engines, ladder trucks, paramedics, patrol vehicles, patrol cruisers, police officers, first responders, firefighters, all swarming all over Brian Albert's lawn, literally feet under his bedroom window. Yet Brian Albert, a sworn peace officer, a first responder himself, never came outside. Never went outside to see what the chaos was about. Never went outside to see if he could assist a man in need. Never walked outside his house to see if he could help a fallen fellow officer on his own front lawn. More shockingly, you'll learn that lead investigator for the Massachusetts Police, Michael Proctor, never set foot inside Brian Albert's house.
You know those reels where it's like the police showed up, suddenly my parking spot needs swept?
Same, dude. Same. Any noise I hear, I'm like, who's that? What's going on?
If you want me to pause, just say, pause.
Okay.
Or just do this.
Okay.
Give you a flight control wand.
Just wave it.
All right. Oh, I gotta
that day. Never engaged in any investigation inside that house that day, even though a party with much alcohol had just occurred in that house. And even though a Boston police officer was found dead or dying just mere feet from the front door on that lawn, he never secured the crime scene, never separated and secured witnesses. He never properly collected evidence. He never secured the evidence. He never searched for signs of a struggle inside or outside the home. He never properly canvassed the neighborhood. Michael Proctor never did any of these things, even though fellow officers of Michael Proctor's actually mentioned, in their words, not mine, that it looked like John O'Keefe may have been, quote, in a fight. You'll have questions about that conduct. During the course of this trial, you'll find that the Commonwealth will not have answers. You'll see from the evidence in this case that this case carries a malignancy, one that is spread through the investigation. It's spread through the prosecution from the very start, from the jump. A cancer that cannot be cut out, a cancer that cannot be cured. And that cancer has a name. His name is Michael Proctor. Now, you didn't hear his name in the prosecution's opening statement. Not once. And I suspect that was probably by design.
Wow.
But make no mistake about it. The evidence will show in this case that Michael Proctor is the very definition of the Commonwealth's case. And he's also their Achilles heel.
Dang.
He was the lead investigator on the case officer, the architect of the entire prosecution. You'll learn there's not a single part of this case, folks, not a single part that he didn't touch, that he didn't direct, that he didn't orchestrate personally. Every single bit of it has his fingerprints on it. You'll learn that Michael Proctor was a longtime family friend of the Alberts.
See why, but...
And he's been disgraced by his own agency, not by us, by the Massachusetts State Police. Investigated, suspended, and fired. The evidence will show that Massachusetts State Police found Michael Proctor guilty of bringing dishonor to the department for his conduct, not in some other case, not in some tangential case, in this case.
Wait, was he convicted of something?
They did the hearing, like, for misconduct, and he's about to say, like, guess it's so hard to get fired, but he was fired for this case.
Right.
Misconduct was found in this case.
Yeah.
I don't even know how you bring something like that to trial.
Yeah, I don't either. And it's just so crazy that she's on trial for this guy's murder. I just don't understand any of it.
I will tell you too, like, this guy, the prosecutor, was so much better at going through the opening statement and, like, so much better at questioning that if the evidence did show that he might have been hit, it might be hard to, like, but that's the reality of it, right? If the evidence showed at all that he had been hit, it would have been an easy conversation to be like, yeah, this woman needs to go to jail.
Right.
I just, with how bad the investigation is, how tightly tied, and there are things that are unfolding in this trial that did not come out in this first one.
Ooh,
so how tightly tied everyone is. Every single witness we will see today, their story has changed. And we're not talking like fundamental witnesses. We're talking paramedics who, like, I'm sorry, your testimony should not change. You did the same thing.
Yeah.
You're a neutral party. And then you find out they knew other people. It's like, oh, yeah. I hate every, I cannot believe, it's terrifying to me that she might go to prison.
Do you think she will?
I don't know. That's the thing with a jury is, like, you never know what they're picking up on. I hope that the jury is watching all this and hearing what we hear and what we see, because, oh, I just can't imagine.
I hope everybody is of sane mind.
Yeah.
This guy is very clear spoken, though.
He's
And
not
I
even
do
the
like him.
most.
On January 28th, 2022, it was a Friday night. John and Karen had made plans to meet up with friends for drinks. It was a happy and normal night for them. They were affectionate. They were loving. They were in good spirits. Nothing out of the ordinary. They started at a local watering hole called C.F. McCarthy's. You've heard that name before, and you'll hear it again. And eventually they made their way over to the Waterfall Bar and Grill, another bar where they ended up. When they got to the Waterfall Bar and Grill, the Albert family was already there, already heavily drinking. You'll learn that this was no ordinary family, the Alberts. The Albert family was a well-known Canton family. Some might even describe them as a very powerful Canton family. Brian Albert was there at the Waterfall. You'll hear that he's a longtime Boston police officer. His wife, Nicole Albert, was there with him. His brother, Chris Albert, a powerful Canton politician. He sits on the select board. The select board actually governs the police department, the Canton PD. He was there. His wife, Julie Albert, was there. Their daughter, Caitlin Albert, was there.
Wow.
His sister-in-law, Jennifer McCabe, was there. Her husband, Matt McCabe, was also there. They were all there drinking before John and before Karen ever arrived. You'll learn that a man by the name of Brian Higgins, also a law enforcement officer and longtime friend, longtime pal of Brian Albert, he was also there. And the two of them, the two Bryans, had been drinking most of the night together. You'll see video footage from the waterfall, which will show you that Karen and John were happy. They were affectionate. They were caring. They were loving. Just business as usual, out on a date on a Friday night. But that exact same video footage which lead investigator Michael Proctor plainly chose to ignore that video footage. It paints a very different picture of Brian Higgins. You'll learn that Higgins had romantic designs for Karen. That becomes important.
Mm-hmm.
Brian Higgins had engaged
Romantic
Karen in
designs?
flirtatious texts,
Not desire.
but days earlier she had put a stop to it. She had ghosted him, in common parlance. In other words, just ignored him.
He had to
The
explain
evidence will
ghosted.
show that the first time he saw her and was in her presence after being rejected by her was when she walked into the Waterfall Bar and Grill along with her boyfriend, John O'Keefe. At 11:58 p.m., just minutes before John ultimately arrived at the Albert residence, you'll see a video at the Waterfall of an unsettling interaction, troubling interaction between Brian Higgins and John O'Keefe. And unlike the lead investigator, Michael Proctor, in this case, you won't ignore that evidence. The facts unequivocally, the data, the science, the witnesses will all unequivocally establish.
This tells me they have a new
Evidence?
evidence, or maybe somebody came forward to say he walked in the house, but definitely new evidence, because I do not believe we were ever able to say last time that he had truly walked into the house, but I'm sure they've had everything like reanalyzed and more data looked at. So yeah, that tells me I think they have a little bit more there.
And I don't understand. Don't these people have cameras? You see the house. You see it's huge. You see they have money. Where are all the cameras?
He's a cop.
Yeah.
I feel like we need to have Corey on
get
here. Her choice to never walk in the house that day tells me how uncomfortable she felt with these people.
Yeah. And how unwanted she felt.
Mm-hmm. Because there are Sean's friends that I don't really know very well. But like, if Sean just didn't come back to the car, I'd be parking and getting out and going to that door. I'd be like, where's my husband?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Or you would have gone in with him, especially if you were invited to a party.
Left John a voicemail, then another voicemail, voicemail after voicemail after voicemail, text messages. But he was unresponsive. He didn't pick up a single call. He didn't respond to a single text. The longer he didn't respond, the more upset she got. The Commonwealth will intimate, as they already have in their opening statement, that these voicemails are evidence that the two were fighting. The actual evidence in this case, however, will show the exact opposite. You'll hear that Karen was very agitated. You'll hear some voicemails where she's swearing, You'll hear voicemails where she calls him names. There's name calling. But you'll also hear the context of those voicemails. And every single one of them, every single one of those voicemails was left for John after he failed to come back out of the house, after he failed to respond to her voicemails and to her texts. Karen believed John had just left her sitting there, grabbed a beer, was partying with his friends. The evidence will actually show that John and Karen never had a crossword, not a single crossword that entire evening before he left that SUV and went inside the house. And you will learn what Karen had absolutely no way of knowing at the time. It wasn't that he couldn't, I'm sorry, it wasn't that he wouldn't respond to her. It's that he couldn't respond to her. And the evidence will show you why. Let's talk about that. We'll introduce you to a doctor named Elizabeth Loposada, a renowned forensic pathologist, a medical examiner, and a professor at Brown University. She will tell you that the injury to the back of John's head, first of all, was immediately incapacitating. And that has meaning. At the moment he suffered that fatal head injury, he couldn't walk, talk, grab his phone, cry for help, nothing. He was completely incapacitated, completely unconscious from the moment he suffered that injury. He was completely still and incapable of interacting with anyone or anything. But the doctor will tell you something more, and just as important. She'll tell you that John O'Keefe did not suffer from hypothermia, as the Commonwealth will undoubtedly allege. His body showed no signs of it. No frostbite, no cold-induced injuries to his organs.
Do you think that that's what happened before?
No.
I don't remember. I think he's about to say it, but they have evidence that he died in a warm place.
Interesting. They can tell that?
From the temperature, your phone logs.
No fucking way.
Medical evidence will establish that John O'Keefe had to be injured somewhere else, somewhere warmer, and his body had to have been moved out into the cold.
Damn.
And that's where, ultimately at 6 a.m., Karen found him the next morning. You will learn that John did not have a single injury consistent with being hit by a car. Let me say that again. The evidence will establish that John did not suffer a single injury on his body consistent with having been hit by a car. Not one.
I remember my thought.
Go for it.
So they think that he got hit with something in the head and that it completely made him unable to move and whatever. Do they think he like completely knocked out?
They say incapacitated, right? So the minute he got hit there, nothing else was functioning. Here's what I wonder.
Wow.
What if he comes in? Let's say he's on the stairs and the dog jumps, bites him or something. Like, say no fight happened, but he hits his head back. I don't know because I'm not a scientist and I don't know enough about this, but it could very well cause raccoon eyes. And then what if it took them a minute to get to him? I don't know. So that's one of my theories.
I think him and Higgins got into a fight.
Yeah.
I really do think that happened. And I think that the dog attacked him because obviously it's a police dog.
Yeah. I kind of wonder when he got to the house if Higgins wasn't like, hey, let's go brawl and fight for your girl. The only thing that just I will never understand is it happens in such a small window. Like Karen doesn't even know if she's welcome in the house. Like that to me is the strangest. What happens from the moment he knocks on the door? Because I believe that happened. I believe he knocked on that door. One of the doors.
I do too.
Or walked
I believe
in.
He was in that house.
Yes, I believe that too. And I just wish we knew what happened in that window. What's crazier is it's about to snow. It's about to be a blizzard. And they're all like, let's go drink.
I was literally telling my sister's husband about this story because I was talking about how we were going to record like this trial.
Mhm.
And he was like, "Who's Karen Reed?" And I was like, first of all, you need to listen to our podcast.
Yeah,
Rude.
sir.
Okay. So then I was telling him about it, and I think my sister said they were doing this in a blizzard. And I was like, yeah, going to the bar in a blizzard.
Which nobody
Bro.
from California would understand because we are just like, if it's raining. I remember
gonna
the first
say.
time I was driving and it started raining and I freaked out. Oh man.
Yeah. It's raining. We're inside. We're not driving around everywhere, okay? In the snow one time, and I will never drive in the snow again. Ever. I don't
I
like
do
it.
have to drive in the snow. It's part of living in the Midwest. Okay, so we do have John O'Keefe's image on the screen of his injuries. So the first witness we're about to see take the stand is Timothy Nuttall, and he is a EMT. He's the first EMT on the scene in the first ambulance that hits the scene.
Did he
And
also, was he in the first trial?
he was. And so I'm going to play for you the cross examination of him, some of it, and let you hear some things that may or may not have changed. And one thing I can't get over with these EMTs is he's a paramedic. So there is a difference, but it's just answer the questions.
Yeah.
You're a neutral witness.
Right.
You found a body. Help me explain everything you saw. Don't add or take away. So just keep that in mind. He was in the first trial. I don't remember where he testified. I think he was day 2 or 3. But yeah, there are some very distinct things in his testimony that are strange. So we're going to start with where we're at right now.
All right.
Some questions about it?
Can we take that one down, Mr. Brennan?
Yes, of course.
Please, Ms. Gilman.
Thank you. Does that photograph, do you recognize that area?
Sorry, this is initial questioning. So this is not cross-examination. Another thing to note is if somebody calls for an objection, if the judge says sustained, it's like, get that shit out of here. We don't want that. Like, no, that's a no. You can't ask that question. If she says overruled, she's like, no, they can ask that. But most of the time, this judge says, no, I'm going to let him ask it. That's not proper, but it's okay. She clearly does
That's
her
just
own
what
thing.
she says.
Or sometimes she'll ask the question directly, which is super not supposed to happen. But
she's doing her.
She is doing her. This judge goes a lot too, you'll hear. The jury luckily cannot hear that. It's just because she's mic'd, we can hear it.
Okay.
Yeah. So
maybe if you're a judge, you shouldn't do that while you're judging.
I don't think she's used to having her trials watched. So most of the time people don't notice. But she so from what I've seen, has not said anything or done anything in the media. So like she keeps pretty quiet and she is unbothered. Doesn't care. She does it her way.
Right.
Yeah. Which is what a judge is supposed to do. Okay.
And
so we'll play this.
She's not used to being judged.
Correct.
Yes, sir.
Is that the same or substantially the same area where you helped try to treat John O'Keefe?
Yes, sir.
Does that look to be a fair and accurate representation of the area?
It does.
With the court's permission, I would introduce this as an exhibit, please.
Okay, and there's no objection to any of these 3?
No.
Okay, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I actually probably just put that timestamp to show you his injuries. Okay. Now we're going to go to.
I feel like the defense is using the prosecution as an argument for themselves.
Oh,
They're
yeah.
like, yeah,
and
sure, use that.
something to remember is you don't have to defend yourself.
Yeah.
Like, you are innocent until proven guilty. It is the prosecution's burden to prove that you did this crime.
Right.
There are very many cases where a prosecution will go and they will say, do you have a defense? And the person's lawyer will stand up and say, no, Your Honor. And I don't know how often that works or not. Don't really research that. But you're allowed to not have a defense and just be like, they didn't prove their case.
Yeah.
It sucks in this one because I think if they did that, they'd be like guilty because why else is this man dead on a lawn? But I'm so glad. I don't know where she gets his money, but I'm so glad Karen Reed got big pockets.
I think maybe her parents are helping her. I mean, they don't
somebody
seem
for
like
sure.
they're poor.
No.
There was just a question of how many times the I hit him came up. It was 3 times.
I'm going to back that up a second.
Really didn't know him. So it was mostly that, and then just kind of seeing where we were at with testimony, going over previous testimony,
That'd be me.
and in that sort of realm.
Prior to today, how many times have you testified under oath concerning the incident on January 29th, 2022?
Once at a grand jury hearing and once last year.
All right. As a matter of fact, last year in this courtroom.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Did you look over your testimony at the grand jury 3 weeks ago during that meeting?
No, sir.
What about the testimony from last year?
We did go over the testimony from last year. Yes, sir.
Were there any issues that Mr. Brennan or anybody else in that meeting brought up concerning any of your testimony?
There was just a question of how many times the I hit him came up. It was 3 times.
And were you advised that that's not what you said at your testimony last year?
No, sir.
2 times?
What was that?
You said it was 2 times last year?
I honestly can't recall, sir.
Okay, but you just saw that, or you just read that and went over that 3 weeks ago.
I believe so, sir.
But
Yes.
you can't remember, as you sit here today, just 3 weeks ago, what y'all discussed in terms of how many times you previously testified that you heard the phrase, I hit him.
So previously testified possibly to 2, but it was 3.
Okay, your memory is clearer now than it was, for instance, a year ago when you testified.
Repeat that?
Sure. Your memory is clearer now as you sit here that it was 3 times you heard that than it was a year ago when you testified that it was 2 times.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Does your memory get better with time generally? Your memory. I'm not talking about the royal you. I'm talking about you.
In certain settings, I mean, there are certain things about different aspects that I recall better than others.
Okay. And does your memory tend to get better or does it fade over time? That's my question.
It can fade over time, but it depends on the context.
But in this case, you're telling this jury that your memory is better now than it was a year ago when you testified about the exact same circumstance, correct?
Yes, sir.
I don't believe this
Okay.
guy one bit.
You then met about a week after that, which would be 2 weeks ago.
Yes, sir.
Who'd you meet with then?
The same group.
And what did you discuss at that meeting?
Again, just prior testimony, and that was really the gist of it.
I'm going to pause him and we're going to move on to another area with him.
Bro, we know if you went through this 3 weeks ago that you remember what was said in the first trial. How are you not going to remember 3 weeks ago?
And how are you going to say that now it's 3 times? I just, yeah, I can't wait for you to hear this next one.
Wow.
He was also under a lot of questioning in the first trial because of what you're about to hear. So.
And you testified that John O'Keefe, quote, had a heavy coat on and possibly 2 other layers of clothing.
Yes, sir.
In April 2024, you reiterated your very specific memory of and you even called it a puffy.
So let me pause here. This is what he said to the grand jury. The grand jury is who chooses to indict Karen Reed.
Okay.
There's going to be more times where I point out, this is what the grand jury heard. The people who said, let's indict Karen Reed, this is what they heard. This is what we now know is fact. I'm going to play this and I'm going to shut my door.
Okay.
Heavy coat that he was wearing, which was then removed so that you could assess his injuries, correct?
Yes, sir.
All right. Not to get too colloquial, but a puffy coat is like, it's got down and stuff in it, right?
Correct.
Looks kind of like Stay Puft Marshmallow Man, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Pretty distinctive article of clothing.
Yep.
And you testified last year that Mr. O'Keefe was wearing that clothing, which you had to remove or somebody had to remove in order for him to be properly assessed.
I did testify that way. Yes, sir.
Okay. And you mentioned that your memory of that big, heavy winter coat was as clear as your memory of other specifics in this case, correct?
Yes, sir.
I asked you that exact question, didn't I?
You did.
And I said, your memory of him having that big, puffy coat on, which stood out in your mind, was just as clear as the other specifics that you've testified to about the case.
Yes, sir.
About that night. And turns out you were completely wrong about his clothing, correct?
Correct.
Matter of fact, he wasn't wearing a coat at all.
No, sir.
He wasn't wearing a winter coat, correct?
Nope.
He wasn't wearing a heavy winter coat, correct?
Correct.
And he wasn't wearing a puffy, heavy winter coat.
He was not.
Yet you testified that he was wearing all of that, and that was clear in your mind at the time.
Yes, sir.
He didn't just testify he was wearing it. He testified he had to cut it off of him.
And what is the point of this other than covering shit up?
And what's so weird about it is that it's not even that. It comes to, are you credible? Can I believe your memory is good? You didn't even remember what he was wearing several weeks later when you were testifying in front of a grand jury. The
Okay,
thing
but
for
can I
me
be
here-
honest?
Yeah.
Okay, he would be me.
I mean, same.
I literally could not, if I had to go through something like this, I could not tell you what somebody was wearing. You know, sometimes my kids will be at school and I'll be like, fuck, what were they wearing today? Like, I just, there's so much that happens in the morning.
Yeah.
And I'm like, God, if they were missing and I had to tell the cops what they were wearing that morning, I'm like, I don't know if I could.
Where I differ on that is I'm the same way.
Mhm.
Somebody could literally rob me and I wouldn't remember what they looked like. But he does this for a living.
True that. Yeah.
Like, so my best friend that is becoming one, she had to go through a whole class where she had to identify. She'd have like a straight on picture, and then she'd have side profiles of like 10 different people, and she'd have to tell you which one was the side profile of the person she was looking at. And she would send them to me and she'd be like, which one is it? And I'd sit there for like ever and look at their ears, look at their noses. I'm like, bitch, I don't know. So
I mean, that sounds fun though.
They teach them how to be observant. But yeah, for all we know, he cut a coat off somebody earlier in the day.
True.
But he testified early in the last trial, and I remember waiting to hear what happened to the coat.
And nothing ever was said.
No. And it's like we got evidence, or we heard that he had a coat cut off of him. Where's the flipping coat?
Right.
When did he get the coat on? Because we knew he got out of, we were told he got out of Karen Reed's car without a coat.
Wow.
And then this guy says he had a coat on, and we're all like,
what?
where's whose coat is it?
Oh, it ain't John O'Keefe's, that's for sure.
I love that he testified for a solid few minutes that my memory is amazing now, so much better than it's ever been. And then they're like, you said he had a coat on, and he's like, yeah, that's why my memory is better now. Okay.
What an idiot. Okay.
I'm very worried about your memory. Okay, so we're gonna keep going, I think. What time stamp am I at? No, I'm going to, we'll let it play.
Did Mr. Brennan bring that up during the meeting 3 weeks ago?
He asked about what I had meant when I said appropriately dressed.
So you did talk about something other than just the I hit him, correct?
Yes, sir.
I will say this is common. Oh, you did talk about something else. These people never think that what they're talking about is a problem. They're always just like, I told you I talked about my previous testimony. I didn't know I had to think of every single thing. So I don't think those are serves. I would have just let that go. But I'm going to pull it forward to not very far.
not being appropriately dressed for the winter.
No, sir.
Yeah. You indicated that you did notice certain injuries on Mr. O'Keefe's person.
Sir.
Once you got him back in the ambulance, obviously it's lighter, meaning brighter lights. You have more equipment in the back of the ambulance. You can better assess somebody's well-being, correct?
Yes, sir.
And you indicated you had a, quote, much better picture of what we were dealing with, correct?
Yes.
You noticed once in the back of the ambulance that he had trauma to the right side of his head.
Correct.
And as a matter of fact, when you were pointing at it, I'm doing that on purpose because you pointed to the right side of your sort of forehead above your right eyebrow, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. The majority or the worst injury that Mr. O'Keefe suffered was actually to the back of his head, which you indicated, you noted was quite matted with blood, correct?
Yes, sir.
I want to talk about the injury to the right side of his head as distinct from the back of the head injury for just a second. Before I get to that in detail, let me ask you, because I just sort of want to cover the bases. You noted the back of the head injury, correct? Is that yes?
Yes, sir.
You also noted the front right side of the head above the right eye, correct?
We did.
You noted some injury to his eyes. They looked blackened.
Yes, sir.
But primarily the right eye was blackened.
Yep.
And there was a golf ball size egg, I think you put it over his right eye, often called a hematoma.
Correct.
And you also noted when you got his shirt off that he had scratches along the right side of his arm. Is that right?
Sir.
You indicated on direct examination today that you believe those scratches ended where? Meaning from top to bottom? And I'm not using anatomically correct language. So from shoulder to wrist,
No, you're not.
where were the scratches that you noted?
There were several. As I noted, they were on his right humerus area.
Tell me what a humerus is.
The right arm.
Biceps.
Right about here.
Okay.
No, a little further, like between where your bicep and your tricep kind of meet. Right about in there.
Okay. And what did the scratches look like?
They were deep. They infamously referred to them as furrows. But they were quite deep. You could tell that there had been some material removed.
Okay.
So in the last trial, he called them furrows. And Alan Jackson's from Southern California and went, I'm sorry, what? And he said,
what the hell is that?
furrows. And Alan Jackson and him went back and forth for like 2 minutes. And Alan Jackson was like, I'm going to need you to use a different word.
Or define the one you're saying.
But he's just trying to say, I mean, he even in the first trial, he did this scratches.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, but they both of them are super embarrassed about the whole furrow thing from the first trial. That's why he said infamously known as furrows.
Material meaning skin and flesh.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Some biological material.
Mm-hmm.
Is that yes?
Yes, sir.
And were they parallel? Meaning they were going in the same direction?
Yes.
Were there any scratches below the elbow?
There were. Yes, there were. They were not as significant as the ones in the upper arm, but they were noted.
Okay. And those were parallel as well?
Yes, sir.
And they looked like scratches to you. That's how you described them.
They did.
All right, I'm going to pause this and I'm going to move it to a different timestamp. So we're going to jump quite a bit.
With firefighter McLaughlin after you cleared the hospital and got back to the station as well.
She was part of the debrief. Yes, sir.
Okay. And all of you discussed what you did, saw, and heard, generally speaking, while at the scene, correct?
Those are more in terms of getting equipment wrangled, really kind of how they go. What did we use? What do we need? What are we going to have to restock when we get back?
So in this, he discusses that they debriefed when they got back to the fire department. Right. And he's saying, and I believe this, he's like, it's more like, what did we use? What do we need to stock up on?
Yeah, I believe that.
I also believe they all knew these people.
Mm-hmm.
I also believe that they were discussing what the hell happened.
Yeah.
But he claims no.
Right.
All right.
Right. But there also was obviously discussions about what had just happened. I mean, you were dealing with a a dead or dying police officer on a lawn, on a snow-covered lawn in a cold environment?
I honestly couldn't speak to that, sir. I honestly don't remember.
It's because you don't remember, correct?
Well, like I said, it's mostly those debriefs are usually they're very as firefighter Flamati's, as Tony's, but they did switch off. That is a routine cardiac arrest. We switch off compressions.
But the video that Mr. Brennan showed you was earlier in time, a few seconds or a minute or two earlier.
Yes, sir.
You'd agree with that, correct?
I would.
And firefighter Flamati had not begun CPR, had he?
I don't believe so.
That's right. He hadn't. But that's the time that my client walked over your general area, correct?
Correct.
Before CPR was started, correct?
CPR was started immediately, sir.
Can we wrap this up?
I don't know if we can, Judge.
Give you a couple more minutes.
Do you understand the confusion?
Objection.
Sustained.
Let me ask you the question again then. Did he have an injury to the left side of his face?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
That's the part I wanted you to hear.
The video that Mr. Brennan showed you,
Yes, sir.
and you pointed to and said, oh, that's the time when she walked over and said the statement.
Yes, sir.
Remember that?
I do.
Firefighter Flamati was not even kneeling down giving CPR, was he at that point?
No,
The answer is yes or no?
no.
Okay, he was not. Later, as the video continues to run, at some point, we see firefighter Flamati enter the screen, kneel down in that bright, reflective yellow jacket, and begin CPR, correct?
Yes, sir.
You had previously said that when you heard the statement and she walked over to you, it was when firefighter Flamati was giving CPR, correct?
Yes, sir.
And at no point, you'll agree with me, we just played the video, at no point after he started giving CPR did my client come anywhere near you. Isn't that what the video showed?
That was the segment that you showed me.
So this whole argument that's happening, it is important, but it's not gonna belabor it because they go through it forever and it makes they more confuse everybody. But his claim is that when this certain firefighter starts doing CPR, he looks at Karen Reed and says, do you know him? And Karen Reed says, I hit him, I hit him, I hit him.
Oh.
So what he is going over here is in his first interview with Proctor, he never says she said that.
Really?
Then in front of the grand jury, he says she said it once. Then at the last trial, she said it twice. Then this trial, she said it 3 times. I hit him, I hit him, I hit him.
This
So
guy
remember
cannot
me-
keep one story straight.
Well, remember me telling you in our last video about her that no one actually ever heard her say it?
Yeah.
So that's what's crazy is he's the one that said he overheard her say it to a female officer.
Right.
In this moment, in this testimony, he's saying she knelt down beside me and said it. So that's what they're going back and forth on is how come last time you just overheard it, but now she said it to you? And why has it changed every single time? But what I want this dumb timestamp is for what's going to come next. And they're going to talk about where his injuries are. But that is what's happening here is Alan Jackson is finally making it to his point where you did change your story so much over time. So how can we trust that? And then he'll talk about the injuries.
You indicated on redirect, that Mr. O'Keefe did not have any injuries to the left side of his body.
Not that I recall.
Isn't it true that
As of this moment, not that I recall. Just remember that.
Okay.
in addition to the egg on the right side of his head, he also had a black eye on the left side?
I remember that the swelling had started it's referred to kind of as raccoon eyes. It's a bruising of both eyes.
Do you
Or
remember
battle
saying?
signs.
Do you remember saying, in answer to the question, did it look like, in addition to the egg on the right side of his head in the front, did he also have a black eye on the left side? Your answer is, if memory serves correct, yes.
Yes, sir.
So it's not true that he didn't have any injuries on the left side of his body or face, correct?
That swelling kind of migrates over time to both sides. That is a common occurrence for both eyes to be swollen.
Did he have an injury to the left side of his face?
He did not.
Did he have a black left eye?
Yes, he did.
Would you consider a black eye an injury?
Yes, sir.
Let me ask you the question again then.
All right, here is the last thing that I think I'm going to have him talk about, and then we're going to switch to a different witness.
Okay.
Scene outside on that front yard.
Yes, sir.
Fire engines, ambulances, patrol vehicles, engines running, diesel engines, flashing lights, people screaming, people talking over the howling wind, correct?
Yes, sir.
Did you ever see the homeowner come out the front door?
Don't recall.
You don't recall, or you didn't?
I have no idea who the homeowner is.
And you never saw anybody come out of the front of the house?
No, sir.
That's all I have. One issue.
That's all he had. Okay. So the next witness we're going to play is Carrie Robbins. So Carrie Robbins is an interesting character. Remember in our first video when I said there was a third person in the car with Karen Reed when she found John O'Keefe?
Yes.
And that person was unproblematic,
Right.
uneventful, nothing to say, nothing to see here.
Right.
They didn't even cross-examine her in the last trial. That's how unproblematic this person was.
Yeah.
We got problems.
I read some stuff about her on Reddit. Some comments from people.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, we're not going to go through her entire testimony, but she testifies and she goes all the way through how close her and John were their whole lives and went to high school together. What she never tells us, but we get from John O'Keefe's mom when he takes the stand, is they went to prom together.
Oh.
Emily D. Baker was like, sorry, who?
Yeah. I read a comment that said, let me see. Okay, so this whole thing, there was a comment. I actually didn't put it in here, but there was a comment that said that you can clearly see that Carrie Roberts had feelings for John O'Keefe. So people think that she had the hots for him still to this day.
Here's where I counter. I think people could easily look back at me and all I have to say to you is a certain person from our childhood and say they definitely had feelings for each other. And like, yeah, you do when you're a kid, but that doesn't mean you don't grow up and get married to the right person.
True.
And not be even a little bit sad that you're not with that person. Because when you're kids, you learn to love people regardless. And then as you grow up, you're like, could not live with that person.
Yeah.
And I think John definitely had his quirks. And like, yes, she was clearly very close with him, but their kids were best friends. Like, you have to remember, they didn't really talk a lot until John took over his niece and nephew's care. And then she was like part of
taking care of them. And
imagine watching a guy you knew your whole life but hadn't talked to in a few years all of a sudden have to raise 2 kids on his own.
Yeah.
Has no idea what to do, but you live right down the street.
Yeah.
And your kids are best friends. They were best friends before he took them into his home.
Yeah. This person said, Carrie Roberts wasn't cross-examined after her first trial evidence. She was natural and likable too. This trial, I believe we saw the real Carrie Roberts.
There is a moment at the end, the last thing the judge says to her before she gets off the stand. I can't wait for you to see it.
Did you hear about Peggy's Angels, perhaps?
No.
I had never heard of this for this case, but
What is it?
somebody on Reddit said, I just found out here last night. She says in parentheses, it's old news, but I missed it until now, about Peggy's Angels. It's a group of women that take Peggy out every month so that Jen can keep Peggy close and malleable. I'm sure Carrie is in the group for the same reason. Jen is deeply insane and they fall in line for her. The common feeling is that Jen McCabe is batshit crazy.
Well, I'm glad you read that before we get into this testimony because...
Okay, perfect. Yeah, I had never heard of that before.
Do you remember those text messages from Jennifer McCabe when she was like texting people because somebody was in her house being interviewed by the police and she was like, she's telling them everything?
No.
Okay, so that came up in the last trial. I never understood who that was about. This woman. This woman was being interviewed in Jennifer McCabe's house. Jennifer McCabe was texting a group chat saying she's telling them everything. She also, even as she sits on the stand this day, doesn't know that text exists.
What?
Yeah. So, buckle up, girlfriend, because this is about to get wild. So, what I did see when she first testified, direct examination, he said, have you always been close with the O'Keefes? And she was like, yes. Did you used to attend trial with them? Yes. Then he says, please don't explain why. But was there a time when you stopped coming to trial with the O'Keefes? And that was when I was like, look for the drama. look for a falling out. Yeah, because what?
I could not find any.
No, because
no drama.
They're all being so quiet. I don't know how you could be this close to the trial and never go back and watch all of it and know about that text with Jennifer McCabe, because that would drive me crazy.
I would be all over the videos if I was involved in this.
Same.
You kidding me?
Same.
That's all I have for the video. We can take that down. You talked about, on direct examination, some of the injuries that you saw Mr. O'Keefe having suffered, both what you observed at the scene and then what you observed later at the hospital.
Yep.
And you noted those injuries, correct?
Say it again?
You noted those injuries. Those were,
yes.
You made note of those.
Yes.
Or at least some of them. You said you saw a hematoma of some sort over his right eye. Is that right?
Correct.
And there was some significant swelling to his right eye?
Correct.
At the scene?
Correct.
Did you also notice a laceration just above his right eye, just under the eyebrow?
I saw it at the hospital, but
Okay.
I don't know if at the scene I saw it.
Fair enough. At some point you saw that laceration to his right eye?
Yes, I did.
Did you also see a laceration to the left side of his nose, a smaller laceration to the left side of his nose?
I don't recall. I know there was blood coming from...
All right, I'm going to move this along because this is just injuries.
We all know what injuries he had.
Hey, guys.
Hello.
Gloria and, well, you can say your own name, I guess.
Gloria?
And Karin hopping in here to let you know that we recorded... hopping in here to let you know that we recorded way too long last week.
Mm-hmm.
And because of that, you get a bonus video.
Yes. So we will have that to you guys Tuesday. That'll be the rest of the first week of the Karen Reed trial.
Yes. It'll be Carrie Roberts in all her glory.
Yes. So look for that on Tuesday. So this will kind of coincide with this video coming out. And this will end this week's podcast.
Yes. So thank you for coming.
And we will see you on Tuesday for Carrie Roberts'
And
testimony.
don't forget, and don't forget to like and subscribe and comment all the things. If you're following us on YouTube,
Oh,
ahead.
yeah. Please do subscribe on YouTube.
Yes. And if you're on YouTube, make sure to hit the like button and the bell so you can be notified when our new videos come out.
Yes.
Yes. So again, thank you for coming to hear the case and experience the chaos.
And there's a lot more to come.
Yes, so much. We just can't stop talking.
Yeah.
And thanks for coming here for the company.
Yes.
Cool. All right. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Hey, guys.
Hello. Gloria?
And Karin. Hopping in here to let you know that we recorded way too long last week.
Mm-hmm.
And because of that, you get a bonus video.
Yes. So we will have that to you guys Tuesday. That'll be the rest of the first week of the Karen Reed trial.
Yes. It'll be Carrie Roberts in all her glory.
Yes. So look for that on Tuesday. So this will kind of coincide with this video coming out. And this will end this week's podcast.
Yes. So thank you for coming.
And we will see you on Tuesday for Carrie Roberts.
And
testimony.
don't forget to like and subscribe and comment all the things. If you're following us on YouTube,
please do subscribe on YouTube.
Yes. And if you're on YouTube, make sure to hit the like button and the bell so you can be notified when our new videos come out.
Yes.
So again, thank you for coming to hear the case and experience the chaos.
And there's a lot more to come.
Yes, so much. We just can't stop talking.
Yeah.
And thanks for coming here for the company. Cool. All right. Bye, everybody.
Bye.